Well, good morning, good afternoon. This is David Willis from the Center for the Study of Social Policy, a senior fellow, and welcome to our September Willis and Friends Early Relational Health Conversations. Today, I'm really excited about the opportunity to bring to you some valuable friends, colleagues, and thought partners that I've been able to work with. And our early relational health conversations are designed to bring you thought partnership, provocative ideas, and this movement of advancing early relational health. And today's conversation about emotional connection, I'm sure will inspire you. We're going to be talking with three of my dear friends that I've been on a journey with about this work, about this breakthrough concept of emotional connection as a vital sign of early relational health. What we're talking about is that connection that's in relationships that is fundamentally physiological, that sense of being in our bodies and in our mind, and can be considered an early relational health vital sign. You know, these experiences begin prenatally and are observable in all of our relationships the most intimately, and especially with our infants and young children, where it's most important in their development. It's that precious heart-to-heart connection that many of us know about, that we feel in our body, in our minds, and in our souls. That emotional connection is experienced in our physiology of stress regulation, and in essence touches what we now can call scientifically that autonomic emotional connection, that part of our relationships that directly connects to our body through our stress regulation system, that has impacts on our emotional connections, our social emotional development, our relationships, and ultimately our health. So today, Martha Welch and her nurturing science team at Columbia actually developed the Welch Emotional Connection Screen to provide, we call that the WECS, to provide researchers and providers with efficient evidence-based methods to assess this construct of emotional connection. The WECS is a quick, reliable, and predictive. It has four major elements, all of which define the state of a pair's connection. That is mutual attraction, mutual vocal communication, mutual facial expression, and that sensitivity and reciprocity. These elements of autonomic emotional connection are a state of the connection between individuals, not the trait of one alone. And what's most important in all of this is that emotional connections can be strengthened, they can be repaired throughout a lifetime. It's a key element. That's what we're going to be talking about today. These are fundamentally human and evolutionarily mammalian characteristics and are important for all of us, and most especially in this moment of COVID, where we all need emotional connection. We all need healing and repair. All of these emotional connections matter. So before I start the conversation with my colleagues, I want to introduce and tell you about each one of them. First, MaryEtta Callier-Wells is a family partner with us at our Early Relational Health Coordinating Center. She is an experienced, skilled educator, provider of information and support to families within the African American community in Portland at the Self-Enhancement Incorporated. I met MaryEtta in her role as a parent lead for the focus groups we were doing with our Family Voice in Early Relational Health study. She's been also an active participant in our Early Relational Health Hub and our Reach on and Read Early Relational Health Coordinating Community, and she's been with me as a co-presenter about early relational health. Then David O'Banion, a developmental behavioral pediatrician at Emory. He and I first met actually when he was a resident in pediatrics at OHSU in Portland. He's an assistant professor at Emory University in the Department of Pediatrics. He's a graduate of the University of Texas Medical School in San Antonio. He's been a champion of the WECS, the teaching and training of this effort and tool with pediatric residents at Emory. I'm eager that he's a part of our conversation today. And then, of course, there's Martha Welch. I've had the privilege of partnering with her and collaborating, having been brought together by the emotional connections we have through the Einhorn Collaborative. And we're now honored to have Einhorn Collaborative investments to help us really advance her work. We've recently had been working together with the Reach Out and Read network that I think it was our July early relational health conversation was with that team. Martha is a professor of psychiatry in pediatrics and in pathology and cell biology at Columbia. She's the director of the Nurturing Science program and the developer of the WECS screen that I mentioned. She's internationally known and really is on this journey with us together in terms of advancing emotional connection for the healing of our culture and for the building of the strengths and capacities of all people. And what's most fun is that all of us have connections with each other in different ways. In that way, we're all individually emotionally connected. So welcome, my friends. Let me start first by asking each of you to offer some opening reflections about these heart-to-heart intimate relationships, this emotional connection. We all seek it, we may know it, and we know that it's foundational to the families that we care about with their interactions with our babies and young children, all of which in this effort of promoting early relational health. So, MaryEtta, let me first turn to you to kick us off. You and I met, as I said, in Portland with the Family Voices. You've been involved with David, Martha, and I in the Reach Out and Read group about learning about emotional connection, autonomic emotional connection. And I remember that you were really excited to take that information back to your community. I wonder if you can talk about the journey you've had with us and this emotional connection and why it's meaningful to you and why you think it's important to share with your families and your communities that you know. So MaryEtta, your first thoughts.
Well, first of all, good morning, everyone from Portland, Oregon. What was exciting to me being part of this group is that with every step and every nuance and everything that I heard from Dr. Martha, Dr. David, and also from you, from Dr. Willis, is that it affirmed what was already being done. And you could see that I was excited that people from all the walks of life in the country is noticing and knowing that this is important, that we can call it that emotional connection, but that relationship is so important. It's an important key towards health and who the person is and how they administer themselves, minus the prescription, but how they introduce themselves to the relationship, how important it is to getting the health going. So I was excited to take this information because I'm sure everybody that's listening to this and watching this, that these are the three person who I just think is remarkable. They think I'm a little bit crazy, and I am, but it's such a wonderful crazy because I get excited to see that how important it is and how people see that the connection is necessary so that things can happen. And so taking this to the group, it was like taking a warm piece of pie to the group to let them see that, man, you are important. And I just enjoyed it because it made sense to me. So I could take it. It's easy to manipulate. It's easy to understand and then to make it your own. And so I felt like I had a gift, giving a gift to gifts. So it was important. It was important. So it worked. It made sense. And so I didn't have to explain it a lot. Yes, I did explain to them the fundamental recipe and everything, but they were able to understand it. I shut my mouth and then they reflect back to me what they got from what I was saying. And then I took what I got from them and gave it back to this group. So I was just excited because it's happening and it continues to happen, and it's happening all across all cultures.
MaryEtta, that's phenomenal. Thank you. Leading us off with such enthusiasm, and I'm smelling that pie as it's warm in front of us. And David Abanya, your opening remarks. I know that you've become a champion of the WECS, early relational health, autonomic emotional connection. I know you have experience with pediatric residents in clinics and with families, and also that you're teaching. What inspires you about this? What challenges you? And what are you learning from families on your journey of this work to get us started?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for having me. So I got started with this work with Martha, I think it was about 4 years ago or maybe a bit more. But when I first saw a video of how the WECS was performed, this lap facing interaction. My first thought immediately was, if I could teach this to residents, if I could just show them this easy skill that is human, it is not incredibly didactic, and it's not a specialist procedure. This is just something that we can see in people. If I could teach this to residents and make them feel this and understand this, just experiencing it with them and with the family at the same time, I thought we would have a window into the kind of intimacy you need to learn more about what is really going on in a family, what they really need to tell you as a pediatrician for you to have the most impact. So my first response to the WECS was, we have to teach this. We have to teach this. That was immediate. I have learned from families that the experience of propping your kid on your lap and interacting with them like no one else is in the room is joyful and it's exciting. And when it's not going incredibly well, families feel it and they're really receptive and excited about getting some help. There's something implicit about performing the WECS, or watching it happen and being in the room for it, that it's really special, but it's a privileged position that we're in healthcare, to be with families for a longitudinal amount of time. I really do envy the general pediatrician who gets to know a family for a really long time, and already has some trusting relationships built that they can build from there. And so I find it as such a useful tool in order to show a family how much you care and how much you are there to support them. And that is what I'm trying to teach the pediatric residents year in, year out here.
Thanks, David. That's phenomenal. And I'm sure the residents feel your heart and your energy of this being critically important and valuable and meaningful. And so, Martha, it's such a great honor to work together. I'm just, you and I are having such a great experience of this journey of translation, making visible, sharing what you've learned. And I wonder if you could talk about your work at the Nurture Science Center, some of the current research activities, the initiative, what excites you most, to help us kick off from your view.
Okay. Well, I first started in at Columbia after 25 years of private practice and running a nonprofit for a mothering center for families to come in. And it wasn't just children with problems. It was typically developing children as well as children with problems. And of course, I learned most of what I know today from those families. But I felt that I wasn't going to get my ideas accepted if I didn't embark on research. So 25 years ago, I started at Columbia, and eventually I started in the basic lab looking at oxytocin. So I started something called the Brain Gut Initiative, which eventually evolved into the Nurture Science program. But at the time, and in the interim, a lot has become known about the gut-brain connection. I was actually laughed at for having that idea as a research program. But obviously, it's become clear that the gut is so connected to health in general and to mental health in particular. So I decided I would study oxytocin and some other neurohormones. Now, when people hear neurohormone, they think of brain. And yes, oxytocin, of course, impacts the brain. But I was certain, because oxytocin is in breast milk, that there must be something going on in the gut. And I saw in mother-child interactions how important it was for the baby's gut to be calm, for them to be able to learn to relate. So I said, I'm going to look for the receptor in the gut. And people said, no, you're not. It's not there. It couldn't be there. Oxytocin is digested in the stomach. Don't look, don't look, don't look. Well, I looked and looked. And guess what? It was there in profusion and developmentally regulated. And not only in the lining, not only in the cells of the lining, but in the nerves of the nervous system of the gut. Now, this is very important because one of the important ways that mothers affect children is through breast milk. And surely these receptors are receiving the breast milk, but the neurons also have receptors. And those can be raised internally by mother-child interaction, such as cozy cuddling. And when you get connected, guess what? Just talking can raise oxytocin. And guess what? Just a sight of someone. When I see MaryEtta's face, I can feel my oxytocin go up, and I'm not kidding you. So sight, sound, smell of a person you love, all those things raise your oxytocin. But the fact that we have knowledge of some of these molecular mechanisms tells us how important it is to support these interactions. Well, that is my mission in life, and I've dedicated my career to that because I think emotional connection is so important. And I have to say how appreciative I am of the three of you for being on this journey to see how to spread the WECS and the Welch Emotional Connection supports, because I think that gives us a very bright future for children, for families, and community.
That's phenomenal. So here we are with
Thank you.
Of course, each of our perspectives, and it is a privilege to be working together. And emotional connection is so important for all of us to ever further bring forward to everybody we talk to. Like MaryEtta, you said, people know, but they need to know more, and they want to learn more. And it's naturally understood, but the importance of emphasizing emotional connection in a culture that values independence and values isolation, unfortunately. And unfortunately, we need to be in its opposite, thinking about those critical emotional connections that are really supportive, if not healing, and developing and critical. So let me ask all of you first, we're talking about this autonomic emotional connection as observable in parent-child interactions, in our everyday experiences. And those are priceless moments of shared attention, vocal communication, face-to-face interactions, and sensitivity. And I remember with our own sons, that valuable moment of being deeply connected, feeling the smile, the facial interaction, the joy of the moment of being together. And that carries on to now. They're in their 40s. I mean, it's just phenomenal to have that sense of a felt, known emotional connection that's valuable for me and for them. It's a joy. So I'm wondering how each of you might talk about your own experiences of these shared core messages, your own thoughts about the importance of this emotional connection, how you share it with your colleagues, your friends, with your family. What are you noticing about bringing that message forward? And how do you think it's most heard by those beyond us as clinicians and as specialists, but just for all people writ large? David, could I start with you? And then Martha, and then we'll go to MaryEtta, okay? David?
You bet. So you can't learn about this experience without feeling personal about it. I think it's impossible. And that just speaks to that universal understanding of emotional connection, the universal understanding of relationships. And so I immediately think to my own two children. I've got a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old who have different personalities and have different ways of connecting with us as a mother and a father. And it's been fun to use a little bit of what I've learned, but a lot of what I've experienced. And so again, going back, it's not a didactic understanding. This is not something that you think with the front end of your brain. This is something that you experience with your whole self. When I share it with colleagues and when I share it with pediatricians, so starting from kind of the specialty domain first, I like to lead off with some of the research that's been done out of Martha's shop, where some of the earliest experiences between NICU babies and their parents and some of those biomarkers from such an early age really did have predictive outcomes on development. And that is really exciting information. It's exciting data. It stimulated me to get involved in the science. So that might be one way that I start to share it. With pediatricians, one thing I find it's important to say is that we're doing this in pediatrics. Watching parents and watching children interact is part of a pediatrician's job. And I don't want everyone out there to feel like this is a brand new procedure, screen, technique or something that is going to be very difficult to learn. This is something that you probably already do when you're in a coffee shop and you're watching two people interact. You are thinking about the relationship that those two people have, and there are subtle signs that humans are very in tune to telling what is the nature of that relationship. We see it all of the time. When a relationship is in trouble, it's even more salient. You feel it when you're in the room with a family, and that it's important for people in the pediatric sphere to understand that when we are watching parents and their children interact, we're not standing by as some sort of judgmental observer. We're there to help, and we're not even placing it all on the parents' feet, because children aren't blank slates. Children have lots of abilities and skills and things that they bring to the table, and there's a lot going on in a family's life that can make emotional connection challenging in that moment when you're in that exam room. So I think it's important to say, we're not judging moms. This is something that you already know, and this is something that you can feel when you're in the room with folks, but this is important to do it and to put it forward as like, this is what I'm in here to do, to be intentional about seeing how your child is growing up in the context of your family. And I want to see how your child interacts with the people here in the room, here in this family that are here to support this child. And I am here to help if I see something that could be concerning.
Great, David. And echoing exactly the opportunity to support families in their journey of the well-being that they seek and their own discovery of their own emotional connections, and that always that opportunity to build and grow in that way when you bring it visible. Martha, how about you? What has been your experience of messaging and bringing your own experience of this shared with other people beyond your professional life, those others around you? How do you think about it?
Well, I was very lucky to live in Connecticut early in my career, where I had a network of friends who had a bigger network of friends. And when they heard about the work I was doing in my fellowship, they said, "We want it." And I said, no. You have typically developing children. You don't need this. This is for problems. And they said, "You don't know what you're talking about." And guess what? I didn't. I wasn't a mother at the time, and I certainly didn't know that typically developing children, especially in our society, have major disruptions all of the time. To top it off, all these mothers I knew in Connecticut were transplants from elsewhere, so they were far from their families and didn't have support. So they begged and begged until I gave a lecture at the Y. And then they wanted to start a mothering center, and that's how I ended up with the full range of families. And they had to knock me on the head a whole lot to get me to see what was there to see. And what did I see? Oh my goodness, I saw the potential of emotional connection, and that stages that we accepted as normal, like tantrums, weren't stages at all, but signs of disconnect, and that it could be easily repaired, and it be repaired in very little children who could then stave off their upsets till they knew they could get into their mother's arms. 2-year-olds could wait. Oh, all the things I learned were so phenomenal. So I became sort of messianic. So naturally, I got this invitation to change my friends' lives. I jumped right in and changed their lives, right? And it was very exciting. I went way overboard. I would stop people in the store who were having trouble in the street. Nobody escaped my intervention, really, for a long, long time. And the Mothering Center continued to teach me so much, and it became a showcase for the world. I had visitors from all over the world, and some of those visitors have greatly determined my career path. So I have a lot of people who didn't exactly ask for help who got it. And of course, I wrote a book which went all over the world, and I still get letters. Now I'm getting letters from offspring who were raised by the book. And it's very exciting to see what's happened. And when I retire, I'll get back to stopping people in the street.
Martha, that reminds me too, for myself, that sense of being on the front edge of a freight train when you gather a piece of knowledge that you just know is meaningful, you can't stop but keep moving and sharing it and moving forward, because it's this emotional connection and the sense of rupture and repair, that sense of co-regulation through emotional connection with eye contact, verbalization, and connection is so powerful. It's not about get control, it's about get connected. And that is such a critical message that countermands so many of the myths that we have around child development and messaging. So I get excited about it too.
David, do you remember saying that to me? I don't know if you could, but when you connected me to Martha's work through the Frontiers on Innovation, and I got back to you pretty quickly right after, and I said, this stuff is amazing. This is what I'm going to do. And helped, I think you helped me kind of talk about the communication and the messaging for what early relational health was going to be, and said, well, you're on the front of a train. And I said, okay. And that's kind of all I knew about 4 or 5 years ago, is that's where I was seated. So
it's
just
like,
watch out.
Yeah, get ready, because here we go.
Jumped on the train, and I'm so glad to have all of you on that train.
Yeah, so MaryEtta, same question to you as to, how do you talk about these experiences with your family, your friends, and those around you? And what are you learning? What are you seeing?
Let's see. Well, yesterday when I was teaching class, we were kind of talking about the question you're asking me now. I was sharing with the students at the end, because we have this closing that we give. Everybody has to go around the room and give each other something to make it through the night. I didn't say through the rest of the year, just make it through the night. And so they'll share something just to encourage one another. And one thing we ended up talking about is that, through COVID, through stress and things, it has made us be a little bit more isolated. And one thing that I have learned with being part of this group of amazing folks, it has brought a piece of a recipe back to me to let me know that it is important. It is important. And I hope this is making sense, because through stressors in life, accountabilities, situations, as Dr. David said, this stuff, it's not that we're giving everybody something new. I just think that we're putting things back on the table that life sometimes throws off, but we put it back on the table because we find out that it's necessary. And the three of these guys know what I'm about to say. Somebody's been putting margarine in, and we had to put the butter back in so that life can be real, that it can taste better, so it can be rich. And so with the WECS, it's about that relationship. Even the virtual world that we have been given because of stress and COVID. All of us right now, I can really see your face. I can't touch you, but I can see your expressions. I mean, I wish you can see everybody, but I can focus and watch how you responded to what I said, or you responded to just looking at me. When Dr. Martha said what she said, I'm sitting up here. I don't know if you can see it. I have my good MAC finish on my face, but tears were strolling down my cheeks, because what she doesn't know, not just what she said, it spoke to something on the inside of me that I needed to hear. So I feel that way about this process, because it brings back essential tools and necessaries within relationships, so that we can be our best selves and also do what we need to do. So I think that I can't live without this. We can't live without one another. All of us, we might not ever meet face to face actually, but because of this, we are better for what we're doing. And I can see all of that trickling down into that relationship that happens in that doctor's office, in that consultation, whatever it is. All these things happen because it's necessary, because stress in life has thrown it off the table. And I'm so happy that this has brought it back on the table, because it's important.
MaryEtta, we are going to meet.
Agreed.
Yeah. I want the peach cobbler.
Oh, I got you.
Okay?
I got you.
But I want to comment too about a few tears in my eyes as you speak, MaryEtta, because we're at a moment where there's tremendous suffering in our country, and in our clinics, and in our neighborhoods, and in our schools. Mm-hmm. And one sees and hears and witnesses that the connections that people have with one another are how we're all holding on. And the messaging of being face-to-face and loving and caring and connecting to the true emotional experience of the moment, that sharing of those is part of holding ourselves together through this time and moving towards that building back better hope that we all have of this work. That's what grounds me, why this messaging is so important. Thank you for sharing all of that. David, I'm going to turn back to you. And you and I have talked about this, but last month, the AAP, Andy Gardner and Lee Beers, we talked about the policy statement that went through the AAP. And you and I have shared that this is a game changer and calls out the paradigm shift for child health care. And I wonder if you want to reflect your thoughts about this.
Yeah, if anyone out there is wondering if you're in the right field or not, let me know how you feel when a policy statement comes out and you celebrate it, or you read it like it's your favorite book. I was so excited to see this, really seeing that the American Academy of Pediatrics asserts statements about safe and stable nurturing relationships and really puts this forward front and center. I think for the last 10 years or so, I've been excited but a little bit nervous about the impact that the research around ACEs has been, adverse childhood experiences, because in my head it was so hard to separate the way we were talking about ACEs as if they were something that was immutable. It always felt very backwards looking, like we were just talking about things that have happened to someone, but not something that is still occurring. And so it was important at the molecular level, at the scientific level. I was always worried about what are we doing next after ACEs? And so seeing, just the words preventing toxic stress and supporting early relational health made me so excited just to say this is what we are supposed to be doing. It's felt that way for many years, that this is what pediatrics is really well centered to do. We have these longitudinal relationships with families. We're there to help. They know we're there to help. Mm-hmm. And we have a very privileged position. I just was not sure if we were using it to our to its full effect. And this policy statement says that we should, that this is what we should try and accomplish in pediatrics. It's exciting to have been working with the WECS for this many years, because now we feel like we have a tool that we can say, this would help you in that effort. This would help you if you're trying to tack towards this policy statement. But this is a really fun time to be in pediatrics. This policy statement makes it very exciting for me.
Yeah, I think of it as an accelerator, a confirmation, but also a direction forward to really add on top of the whole child health transformation agenda, partnering with communities, but also moving far beyond trauma and far more to recovery and resiliency, and also strength-based efforts of healing that are captured, I think, in these concepts of emotional connection.
It felt bogged down for a while on, are we measuring what happened?
I know.
Are you doing something to measure that? And if you're excellent and you're honoring that experience and that historical trauma in a way that is exudes cultural humility, then I think you can use that and pivot from it. But I do think that requires quite a lot of skill versus talking about what are we going to do now? What are we going to do going forward? I think that requires less skill, and it requires more of a human touch. Just being a person in the room and seeing the stress that a family is living through and saying, I'm here to help. Here are some suggestions.
Yeah, absolutely, MaryEtta. That makes me think about what we learned in the conversations in Portland around with families, the family voice work in early relational health, and the message that our teams made visible about the criticalness of the trust between care providers and their clinicians. Can you talk a little bit about that and how you think this work around early relational health and emotional connection can actually help build trust, and your thoughts about that?
Well, my thoughts are going to be sharing exactly what parents said. And so it's an honor to share that. The parents actually said that it is they know that they have to bring their child to a doctor for whatever reason. And the fact in that relationship with the parent and the child is going, okay, well, my parent is bringing me to this place. And so I love my parent. I trust them. So wherever they're bringing me, it's going to be good. And so when that parent gets into a doctor's office, and the doctor can be, he or she can be just wonderful. But maybe the person that's at the desk to take the intake application is having a problem with this family because of they look like me, or whatever it is, the color of their skin, or maybe the way they're dressed, or whatever it is. And that right there, that brings about stress. And then so what happens is when that parent and child gets into that office with the doctor, it is so important from what they have told me that because of the relationship that they have with their pediatrician, that experience that they had with the person at the desk, it kind of just dismissed so that they can get to what is at hand, the importance of my child's health. So the trust has to be there, because to all of you as doctors, you would be surprised how much it's not just power, but how much compassion that you exude in every interaction that you have with each patient that you have. Because yes, you got to have so much time in this meeting. You got to get this done. You got to write that down. This person has to get this, time moves. But we don't want it to move so fast that we miss what's going on the ride, the experience itself. So the parents have said that it's important once they get in with the physician, with the doctor, whoever it is that's in the office, that the trust is there, not just there, but it is given. And every word that they say, at the hello, they should be able to feel that trust. After goodbye, when I hand you the prescription, they should still feel the trust. When we say, I'll see you later, or I'll make some connections for you, you have to have that trust and know that it's going to actually happen, so that when I come back again, I am empowered, I'm excited to see you, and that I'm going to be back. And guess what? I'm going to go back and tell my friends or my community, oh, you need to go to this center. You need to go see Dr. Martha. You need to go see Dr. David or Dr. David Willis. They are amazing. And this is what happened. This is what they said, that when they feel comfortable, they not only take it in their home, they take it to other homes to let them know how they're feeling and how the trust is there. So you need to go over there. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, it makes me think about the context of the relationship allows for the hearing of this critical piece of information too, not just the experience of learning in the moment, but also the context of readiness. I think those get connected just at times too. We have a lot to learn there.
Yes.
I wanted to come to you about when we talk about autonomic emotional connection, we talk about this as a state and not a trait. And then we especially talk about emotional connection as being an opportunity for healing, for prevention, for hope that's embedded in all this work, and how we really think about impacting our culture and our community. Can you talk about that element of state, how that becomes more evolutionarily healing and preventative over time?
Well, I think it would be useful if I explain the autonomic nervous system.
Sure.
Even the name. Autonomic means involuntary or outside of conscious control. It's the nervous system of our organs. And of course, they're outside of our conscious control. And we don't even want to hear from them. If we hear from it, it's a problem, right? But this autonomic nervous system is very important. It's called the second brain. It's the it's the nervous system that actually allows us to calm each other. Now, these two nervous systems are connected, importantly. And one of the main connectors is a big nerve. But the information flow is 80 up and 20 down. So that means if this isn't calm, this isn't going to work. But we're asking babies to self-regulate and young children to self-regulate. and they're not designed for it. They need this input to have the calm going so their brains can learn. All right. So it turns out that the autonomic condition is between partners. And when you don't have one, we know what the consequences are. We know that 55-year-old men who don't have anybody have enhanced morbidity and mortality. Okay, so we know what the extreme is, and we know children who are neglected also don't survive. So it's a state of more than one person. It's a state of two people, and importantly, it's a state between mother and child. And it's not anything to do with either one of them. It's not the traits of the two people. It's the state that occurs between them. And it's an autonomic state. So inasmuch as babies and young children can't self-regulate, it becomes of paramount importance because self-regulation becomes dysregulation, and dysregulation leads to all kinds of adverse behavior. But a regulated autonomic nervous system allows the brain to function, to learn, to create, to do deep thinking, to do quick thinking. And what gets us there? Balancing those autonomic states. Okay, so there's one state between mother and child. And we know that we can get it balanced by emotional expression, emotional communication between the two. We have babies in COVID now. Doesn't matter if the mother had COVID or the mother didn't have COVID. 80% of them aren't looking at their mothers. And if you don't look, you can't start to connect. So we get the emotional expression going, and that allows the baby, permits the baby and mother to orient to each other. That's the setting they need to get this connection at the autonomic level. Okay, so and the stronger the expression of emotion, the more it's conveyed, the longer the orienting and the stronger the orienting response. Now they're ready for social emotional engagement. And that we can measure, and you named the 4 things of the WECS that tell you if somebody's connected or not. And why do we need them? Are they attracted to each other? Do they seek cozy proximity? Do they have warm faces and warm voices? And do they have equal give and take? That's what we've got to get to, and we know how to do it. A very brief emotional exchange gets us there, and we feel good. And it's equally beneficial to both sides. You know, MaryEtta said how she reacted when I told her how I felt. It's two people reacting to each other. And it can be positive or be negative. You can get a positive orienting and a negative social emotional reflex. Okay. So it doesn't just do good to just orient. Then you got to have the positive. And we see children arching away from their mother's gaze, averting. This is very disturbing, especially these COVID era babies. So the beauty of looking at these vital signs is now you know what to do. You got to get those things going, and it's so easy to do. And the beauty is what kind of children it turns out. It turns out empathic children, altruistic children, cooperative children. And it gets them right off a toxic stress cycle. We can't depend on society to fix itself. It's too slow for children. But we can buffer them with solid parental emotional connection. And we know that connection breeds connection. And that connected child goes out and breeds connection. And MaryEtta will tell you what a joy it is to have that kid in the class and how that kid helps other kids engage in emotional connection. Right, MaryEtta?
So David, in this COVID moment, what you're witnessing clinically and what you're hearing from your residents and in the experiences that are happening that the medical system is struggling with at every level, what are you discovering that your residents and yourself are, how they're messaging and how families are hearing the importance of connection, especially as a protection mechanism from the isolation, as that opportunity? I'm really aware that some of the family surveys work that's been going on around this period of COVID says a couple really interesting things. One of which is, of course, families are stressed, but some of the young children are finding great value of being home and connected. And there's been positive sides of this story that have been visible. The other thing that's been really interesting, there's some recent survey data out on families writ large that are saying there are families that are choosing to stay, wanting to stay working at home so they can be more connected to their kids, feeling it for themselves, for their well-being as well as for their children. So there's a movement happening bigger than ourselves that's knocking on the door of culture. But I'm curious what you're witnessing day by day and hearing in clinics, and how, as you expand with the WECS and the training about emotional connection, are you finding resonance with what the families are experiencing with the messages you're giving them?
I would put a little bit of caution on the the families that are choosing to stay home. It's usually a family that's maybe in a bit more privileged status than some of the families that I'm taking care of.
Yeah.
I do think that working from home and all of the infrastructure that requires, and the kind of job that you would need to have in order to work from home, is fairly selective. What I hear a lot are challenges with the virtual learning, and how families are sort of suffering through trying to juggle work and juggle some virtual learning. And then this year is unique compared to the prior COVID school year, because there's so much back and forth, going to school, finding out that there's been an exposure, and by Wednesday you're back home and you're quarantining for the remainder of the week, and maybe you'll start back on Monday again. So for kids to establish a routine, it's been really, really challenging. I think one of the ways we've been trying to talk about this in clinic is giving families an excuse, or giving them some permission to make their choices. So for a family that is feeling like their resources are stretched thin and they need their child going back to school, but they're also stressed about what does that exposure mean for coming back home, I want them to feel comfortable in the decision, because we should be understanding that families really are experts at their family situation. And they may be coming to us to ask for some information about the virus or about the vaccine, and try and be open and honest about that discussion. But they may be struggling a lot with a decision that they have made that is almost always for the best of their family, but they want reassurance, or they want almost permission for having made a decision that they're worried about is more stressful. One of the things that I've been trying to encourage, though, is helping families think about their bubble, think about their exposures, and think about the other people that are in it, and really turning to them, to the extended family or to neighbors, and really talking to them about how important that relationship is, how important your support is to me. I'm home with my 3 kids by myself, and it is important to me that your family is still connected to mine, and my kids get to play with yours. And at the beginning of the pandemic, I felt like we were all as careful as possible, and now things are getting a little bit more relaxed. That may not be great for the epidemiologists, but for the relationships, I am happy that we've got we're getting back to friendship status for a lot of kids on the block, for a lot of kids in the neighborhoods, that they're being able to see their friends, see their peers, and get back out there and get connected. But the balance has been almost impossible to navigate, and I always lean towards assuming a family is making a good decision based on all the information that they have, even if they're not sharing all of the information with me.
So you're suggesting too that families are sharing with neighbors and friends more authentic emotional conversations, which is part of that emotional connection opportunity of managing the moments in time and growing.
And as often as I can, that is a suggestion.
It's phenomenal. MaryEtta, for you, how about with school and the families that you're with, in terms of emotional conversations, emotional communication, that sense of connection? What are you witnessing?
I'm just wondering if you were actually in my classroom yesterday. You're kind of scaring me, Dr. Willis. Everything that you're saying this is kind of what we were talking about. We were talking about living out loud, and how the stressors and COVID and all the social distancing has caused us to look inside. Strengthen and fortify the families. We listen differently now. We look at each other differently. Our communication styles have changed, but also we need to take what we're doing inside that house and do it outside. And then the question to them was, how are you going to do that? And even if it's just to your neighbor or whoever, pet the puppy that's crossing in front of your front door or things like that, because with this situation that we have, that is temporary. But even in this, I don't see it all as terrible. I see it again as part of the recipe that was thrown off the table. We were forced to go inside so that we can come out better. So it's time for us to start bringing it out so that everything else is better. Because some people now they're in and now they don't know how to come back out. I hope this is making sense.
Absolutely.
So what has happened is that it's really funny. The children are leading the parents and letting them see that, okay, they're telling their parents, I need that connection with my friend. I know that there's COVID, mom or dad. I'm going to sanitize. I'm going to put my mask on and everything. I'm going to stay 6 feet, but I need that connection. So they're getting their connection now from their parents that they felt they was lacking prior to. This is a sidebar here. So now the kids are going out even more fortified because the connections at home have been fortified. So now they're taking that outdoors. So it is really important for not only for me, but for the kids and the families to see that it's important for them to take the tools that they have now and go out loud outside and share it with their neighbors so that their community can be strengthened. Everyone, we know that right now there's some very difficult things going on. I can just say here in Portland, Oregon, it has kind of broken my heart because a lot of these kids that we're finding and that are no longer in the earth realm, they used to be in my class or in a program that I had, or I knew their parents and things like that. But because of the relationship that we have had, we've been able to help and to comfort and to strengthen one another throughout these times. So right now, even though these things are happening, we have a lot to be thankful for. We have a lot to encourage one another for. I still stand on that perspective taking concept, adding with this WECS situation is for whatever we do, it should be connected to somebody else to strengthen them also. So I hope you guys, really hope this is making sense because it's making sense to me, but I want to be able to share it with you so that when we leave this platform today, that everybody is empowered even the more.
MaryEtta, that I'm so with you in that the sense that there's a movement bigger than ourselves that has to do with the connections that we actually all have with one another, and the healing and opportunity of hope, I think, lies in these emotional connections, that autonomic emotional connection, and it's always operating. How do we operationalize that ever more intentionally, make it visible, and each one of us use and strengthen those emotional conversations, those emotional connections with our kids, with our neighbors, with our family, with our friends, because that's, again, how we hold on and how I hope that we can be transformative to this cultural moment, because we're on a journey of this country needing to recover itself. We're in this racial reckoning, and we're in this moment of the recognition of trauma is embodied in who we are as a nation. And there's an effort at healing at every level taking place by authentic, real, true emotional conversations or authentic listening. So we're starting to come to our end of this amazing moment. I want to give each of you a moment to give some final reflections and thoughts, about maybe 2 minutes each. And David, how about you first? And then I'll go, Martha, to you, then finally to MaryEtta, and then we'll close. So David.
Okay.
Thoughts?
Yeah. Emotional connection and supporting early relational health is built into primary care pediatrics. It's something that we have been doing, and we have a lot of programs that really set up as tier 2, almost treatment. But this is something we can do for every family. It's something that we can look for every family. And when we are supporting it, you are going to get more positive feedback from those families. They do enjoy it, and that is not based on their emotional connection state. It is based on your concern and your involvement in that relationship that you are now growing with that family. So we can do it in pediatrics. It is not an incredible specialized procedure. This is not something new and difficult to do. This is something that is good, that is humane, that it's a human instinct. You can learn it, and you can learn to do it, and you can learn to factor it into every single visit. And I really want that for pediatrics. I'm excited to be here.
Thanks, David. And Martha, closing thoughts.
Okay. Of course, I know and I've felt and I've studied the power of emotional connection. And I first started out, I thought that I had the antidote to the ills of society. Honestly, I thought that 50 years ago. But now when looking at the antidote, I see that we should be looking at the foundational unit of two, mother and child, making life better for each other. It's great because it doesn't take special gizmos. It doesn't take any money. It doesn't take extra time. And it's for all humans, no matter who they are. Every mother and child want this desperately, and they're meant to have it. All it takes is emotional connection, emotional expression, and 5 senses. And we know from our studies that we have results 5 years later showing better physiologic regulation in both mothers and children just from doing this. So, we've been using this, and I've been using it, as I told you, on everybody I know for 50 years. We found that emotional connection strengthens relationships, gets them into a mutual state, and when it's repeated over and over again, it produces a person who goes out and can do this with other people, who can elicit it in other people who might not be so good at it even. And as long as we stay grounded in this, we're going to have reasons for hope. And, now we're confronting further isolation from COVID and some of its bad effects that David mentioned, and inequities, which are overwhelming. We know we can buffer by turning to each other and getting connected. And we know that emotional connection is all about repair. And it's not just repair of our disconnects with that person, our child, our mother. It's with everybody, okay? It extends to everybody.
Great. Thank you so much, Martha, for all that you've done and inspiring us so much. And MaryEtta, your final closing thoughts, please.
All I can say is thank you to everyone for being here. It's an honor to be part of this group of amazing folks, and all of you out there also. All I can say to you is never give up, and it's never too late. Latch on to tools that can sync and interface across all cultures because it's necessary. And guess what, everyone? We cannot do this alone. So this is going to force you to be all up in my face, because I'm going to be in your face, because it's necessary for everything to not to just get off the ground, so that it can get in us first, then it can get into those that's connected to us. So we can't make it, you all, without one another. A lot of times we hear, hold on. I'm asking you to let go.
Oh,
I'm asking you to let go. Everybody, we on the front of the roller coaster, because what happens when you let go, that means that we get out the way, and those things, see that uncomfortable feeling? I take that uncomfortable feeling is that I'm about to learn something new, or I'm going to take back what I shouldn't have gotten rid of the first time. Mm-hmm. So it's important for us to understand that we cannot do this without one another, because we need one another.
Well, MaryEtta, thank you too, and to all three of my dear friends for this amazing conversation to always be continued, of course. And for those listening in, I hope this has been meaningful for you all. These will be posted on our website. We have our other Willis and Friends conversations that are likewise on the CSSP website. And next month on October 20th, 2 o'clock for Eastern and 11 o'clock Pacific, I have another couple friends I'm eager to share with you. Isabel Chu who's an author, thought leader, and for impact investing and future well-being. Joe Waters, a co-founder and CEO of Capita. And we're going to talk about envisioning a relational future within a multicultural society and how early relational health and this emotional connection is central to that kind of future of ourselves. So thank you for being together with us, and we wish you all well.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, David. Thank you, MaryEtta and David O.